Our next speaker is Lloyd Bell. Lloyd is from Cvent, and Lloyd is a longtime contributor to PNSQC, so it's great to have him up here, and he's going to be talking about how he implements a culture of quality at Cvent. So thanks, Lloyd.
Thanks. Good afternoon. So I hope that's okay. I mean, there's a whole bunch of electronics up there, so water, electronics, really good. So I'm up here to kind of talk to you about the culture of quality at Cvent, and kind of ask why that's important. Well, quality, as you guys know, is kind of built off of the experiences that you kind of see from mistakes or even the good things that you've experienced or other people have experienced, right? So part of what we do right here is we're kind of sharing these experiences so you can take that back into your future, and then also kind of think of whether or not it applies to your current state or even what you're doing right now. So the first thing I want to kind of talk about is like, how did I get involved with the quality culture at Cvent, right? When I first started there, first thing I had to ask myself is, what kind of values does this company bring? What drives them to promote quality? Do they do decisions by collaboration, or are they more top-down? What I like to do when I get into a company is I like collaboration. I don't think myself as the smartest person in the room. In fact, the reason why we want to build teams is because we have a lot of experiences that are shared that can kind of scale us and bring us to that next level, right? Cvent, when I first started with Crowd Compass, is also a very small company. It's scaled to a $2 billion organization now. During that time, there's a lot of lessons that were learned. These lessons are kind of important because, everybody has these different things that occur. And so if you don't learn from your lessons, how can you improve on quality? How can you build that culture that says that this is what you desire, this is what your value is? A lot of these things, and the good part of this cartoon is like you see the guy at the end of the table always making decisions. So when you're looking at the company you're at, is it a lot of these decisions, is it made by the smartest person in the room or the head of the organization? Or is it done through collaboration with the people that you have? Remember, the people that you have on your teams are the ones that carry your organization forward, right? And the first thing you have to think about when you say culture is people. It's not one person. So when you look at your culture, is that decision from that singular source? Or are you doing it with collaborators? Transparency, the next part. How transparent are these decisions that come down from the sources? How transparent are you with your own team? As a leader, I try to be as transparent as possible. How can I, lead an organization unless the people that I'm surrounded with kind of know why decisions are made or even why we want to get to the next level? The interesting thing is you can really tell this by talking to your team members and say, why do you build the things that you build? And if they come back to you and says, well, it's on my list, I'm doing the Kanban, right, Agile, and it's just the first thing that's popped up, that's what I was told to do. That's not really a quality factor that you really want to get into the future. You want them to understand why they're building the stuff they're doing or testing the way that they do. And one thing that you can do is think about who signs off on the product that you build to your customers. Is your final decision maker QA, where you deliver it to QA and QA says, I think this is great, right? And then they deliver it and they say, this is signed off, we're good to go to production. Been in a lot of companies that do that. But what I've implemented here is, we don't do sign-offs by QA. QA is a team member, right? They have a part in the whole system. But the product is built by the team. So change that conversation. If you want to build this culture, invite more people into it. Invite the people that are also building and say, do you have a stake in this? So change that sign off to not just think about QA, And then, we as in Cvent, I think we're successful because our devs and QEs actually champion each other. It doesn't matter if we find a bug. It's not, oh, the devs did it. It's not that at all. Or it's not, QE missed it. You don't want to have that conversation because it doesn't help anyone, right? So what's the culture that you want to build? Do you want to build where you're finger pointing? Everybody says no, of course they don't want to. But how do you know you're successful is whenever you can have your teams challenge each other as well as speak to each other and basically say, I believe that this person did their job, or it was a mistake by everyone, not just the QE, not by the devs, but by the team. So this one's an interesting topic here because how do you view your customers? Your customers could be internal or external, right? In some organizations, if you're an IT organization, you're working with internal customers, are you really thinking about what your team wants? Are you thinking about what your customers want? Do you only know about your customers through someone else? Or are you in touch with them? Right? And I want to kind of tell you a story. Now, this story sounds like it's, could be bad, but it's a learning lesson. So we actually, when I first started, we instituted a technical support team. And this team's job was to basically be the liaison between the customer and our dev team, right? And the reason why is because our dev teams was so inundated with all this customer complaints or feedback that they didn't have time to develop a lot, right? Great idea, because you implement this team and then you end up saying, hey, we don't have to talk to the customer, right? We can just keep on building. That's not really the right thing. After a while, we started thinking, it's like, hey, did we just lose touch with our customers? And how did we learn this? Is because when we ask the question, what are you building? We don't know, right? So learning lesson, how do we get past that now? Well, now our technical support team is there to represent the customer, to speak for them, for us, right? To say, here's all the complaints, wrapped up, maybe the top 10, top 20, and this is why we are doing the things that we do. Impact analysis on bugs, that would go into the backlog. So a lot of times speed is important, especially when companies are growing up. So you talk about speed over quality, but every bug that you put into a backlog, that has an impact, right? It has an impact to your customers. Do you know what that impact is? When you put it into the backlog, or are you thinking the impact to my team, right? I want to get this out, this product out, or I want to get this sprint out because it's the end of the sprint. And so all these bugs we can't fix in time. So let's, backlog it. Do you have this conversation? And we do. We have analysis on these bugs and say, hey, if we decide to go to production, which we do continual delivery, if we go to production after the sprint with this, these customers are going to be affected. This is what is going to happen. Here's how the other teams, like customer service, is going to react to it. And then when you develop things, do you have success goals in mind? Are you thinking about your sales? Are you thinking about the usage? Are you thinking about retention? Are you talking about how what you built is going to affect your customers, not just in like a user acceptance test, right? You're saying, bring in the customer, saying, hey, is this what you really wanted? How do you know this information? What's the culture that drives that piece of quality for you, right? So we have to do these current conversations where we're at. And I want you to kind of think about that for how your culture is structured. Now, when you talk about culture, you have to talk about people, right? The people that are delivering your team, that is delivering all this software or hardware or what you're building. What kind of sacrifices do you make to achieve the quality goals that you have? And it's not just about time. the investments that you use, right? How do you talk to your team and say, this is the culture that you want to bring? Do you do it in your one-on-ones? Do you talk about culture in your one-on-ones? Or do you only talk about what your tasks are? Are you just giving updates in these? Think about your one-on-ones, because these are personal reflections that you should be having with your direct report or to your manager, and saying, here's your goals, right? Here's what I'm doing to sacrifice my time to learn and contribute to the company. But at the same time, as a leader, you have to be the one saying, hey, are we putting the right things in front of people that is going to keep them passionate? People will sacrifice time because they're passionate about it. And that culture that you bring because of that sacrifice is important. Also working with stakeholders to affect mid-sprint injections. Now, come on, if you guys are doing sprints, you guys hear this all the time, right? It's like, guess what, drop everything. We have to change what we're doing in the middle of a sprint. You know, we have retrospectives, yes, that you're supposed to talk about this stuff. But how do you truly keep this from happening? How do you talk to stakeholders about this? Because if you think Agile is great for developing things from the very beginning and iterate upon it, it's not great for talking to stakeholders who are used to just reporting, okay? So you have to get them in on the cycle too, right? You have to make sure that they understand that culture, and as well, how they can be part of it. And then, are we really learning from our mistakes? Retrospectives and tracking those items. So we talk about it. What's the actions? You know, all our retrospectives, we actually have at least 1 or 2 actions that we have to do. And every retrospective we come back, a stakeholder is present. A stakeholder says, hey, what can I do? Not what did you do, okay? Pride, okay, this is really interesting here. So a little bit about my background so I can talk about this is that, you know, I came from a computer gaming background. I actually did some voice acting, designing work, had some fun. I mean, what I like to do in life is have fun at what I do, right? And I want my people to have the same pride in their work too. So when I go into one-on-ones with people, I talk about their happiness level, right? I want to know, first thing out of my mouth to them is not what you did. It's how happy are you from a scale of 1 through 10? And I want to know. I want to know if you're a 3, right? And I want to know what I can do to change that to be a 10. Now, some people get down because what they're doing is redundant. Are you having these conversations, you know, finding out whether or not they're actually happy in what they're doing and changing that? Are you telling your manager how happy you are? Or are you just giving the status quo? The other thing about happiness is, are you putting things in place that they're passionate about? You know, one of the things that we've implemented is being a CEO of something, right? And a CEO is basically a person that's going to champion a process or a gap. Everybody on my team is totally different personalities, different skill sets, and they have a different passion. Some of them, their passions are just documentation. It's not mine, but I'm glad that there's people that have that kind of passion. So in any organization, it's like target those people to the things that they love to do, because they will keep, you know, doing those things and moving you along if they're passionate about the things that they do. If you just put the stuff on their plates that they don't like, guess what's going to happen? Their happiness score is going to go down, right? And if you're not having these conversations, how can you know if the people that are working with you are actually excited? Team outings, those are important, right? Having little picnics, inviting people to your house, do some karaoke. I do that in my house. I invite people over. Look, I don't have the best voice, especially when I have a cold. But the bond that you share, right? The culture you want to build involves people. So if you're not going to be doing these things, or if your team doesn't do it, can you do it, right? This isn't just about a leader doing this stuff. It's every person on that team has a part that they can, create in their culture. And in regular product, the demos. Are you proud about the work that you're doing? Are you proud enough that you are demoing it to the other teams? When you demo this, is it just basically, I built this and we did this and yep, it's over? Or are you saying, look, here's the value that we're bringing. Look, and all our teams, we got together and this is a lesson that we learned, right? Talk about it. Change those ways because pride is important for building culture. And then what do we do to advance the quality of the product? So, when we talk about advancement, we're talking about change, right? So, are we doing the same things that we were doing 6 years ago? Sometimes we do. I've been caught multiple times by my own team where they say, I know I'm just kind of new here. I've only been here for like 6 months, but we kind of did this, and I don't understand why we have this process. Why do we have this end-of-day sync that everybody's involved in when no one speaks? And it catches me off guard sometimes, right? Because I'm like, well, here's why. It's because we had this big old team, and everybody wasn't talking, and we didn't have Slack, and we didn't have all these other things. We didn't have these meetings that we were already together. We didn't have retrospectives. So we created this thing, and now, why are we doing this? Dang it. So then we end up changing this. Do you have those type of conversations? Once those conversations happen with me, I think we have to do some reviews. Sometimes just look at your processes. We tried to do an evaluation of our tools every 6 months. Some of the tools that we use, it was back, 5 years ago. And for software, 5-year-old tools are kind of bad, right? Because tools are changing regularly, especially for our business since we're dealing with mobile technology and data. That technology's changed. Look at the phone from now and 5 years ago. If you're using the same phone from 5 years, people kind of look at you kind of funny, right? And then we evaluate the processes at least twice a year too. Is that end-of-day sync that you're doing really helping your team anymore? Is the thing that you were doing 6 months ago where your meetings, meetings, how many meetings are you in that have no value anymore, right? Are you really taking away what you got out of it the first time? Does things need to change? And if you're not evaluating it, what's that kind of culture that you're bringing? And for each of the people on my team, I actually make it a requirement that they pick 2 gaps in the company that they have to change. And part of that change involves collaboration, right? Because the culture that I want to build is that team collaboration. I don't want to be the guy that just tells people what to do. I don't want a team that just thinks that way either. So bring that gap and say, what are the 2 things that you want to change? And I'm going to put that on your goals this year. And I'm going to rate you on it. But the rating is going to come from me teaching you also how to do those gaps, right? I want to teach you how to be a leader. And you have QA best practices. You have coding best practices. What are you doing to move that forward? Okay, do you do that evaluation? Do you talk to each other? For our company, we have to make sure we're doing, continuous improvements, right? But that continuous improvements involve everyone, not just the QA team. We're as much at fault on things as anyone else. We can't put the blames on people. You got to just improve. And then new hires fulfills the gap in knowledge. Every new hire I have, like I said, there is no one on our team that is a mini me. I don't want it, right? There's enough Lloyds in the world, right? We only need one on a team. We need to get more people that can be better in some areas. I'm not a master at everything. Then that's why I want to hire people that have knowledge beyond what I do in certain areas. Not only because they can mentor the other people on my team, but they can also learn from them too, right? So if you hire for just what you get on your resume, and what the job description is, don't do that. right? Think about the culture that you want to bring in scaling or improving the people that you have in the future. And then new hires also have assigned mentors, right? Everybody that comes in, they're new to the company, right? They're not the masters of everything. Assign them a mentor so that they can get on the floor. They can drink from that fire hose, right, as fast as possible and learn, but then they can also teach. And then the last thing, what do we do for our people to keep them learning? That passion changes over the years, right? But that technology to drive that passion also changes. So what are you putting in front of yourself or to your managers or to your people that keep them changing, keep them processing, learning new things, right? Because these passionate people are what's going to keep driving your culture. You know, do you have career growth discussions? For us, it happens at least once a month. There has to be a connection. It is not a status meeting. It is, what do you need to get to the next level? I will put in places where you have to speak in front of multiple people, you know, so that you can learn leadership. You have to present a paper to PNSQC, right? So that you can be a voice and you can learn from other people too. That career discussion needs to happen on a regular basis. If the only time you're doing it is on the yearly review, then you're really not doing a lot of service to each other. We also make it a requirement to go to local meetups, you know, or attend conferences. And this is so that they don't just learn from the culture that they're in, right? I want them to learn from everyone that's in their community. I want them to go out and experience, not just to see that there's new things out there, but sometimes they even hear that other people have the same problems that they do. It's important to recognize that there's people that also have the same issues that you are encountering, right? Get that collective going. Talk about this, network. Hosting local meetups. The new meetups are very interesting here in Portland. One of the first communities I've seen this happen with success. Take advantage of it. And in supporting the conference in their first year, we make people go out to conferences because that is the business that we do at Cvent, so that they can see what our customers deal with. They can experience the product firsthand, okay? And with that experience, they bring it back so they're connected to what they're working on, right? This is the culture that we are trying to build. And what I want to do is just share that with you to see if any of these things can reflect for you in the future, or if it's some process or problem that you're having now, maybe you guys get some new ideas. And with that, I say thank you.
Thanks, Lloyd. Lloyd, you just rose my happiness level.
Thanks.